Okay, here goes. Poor Al Franken. He was working so hard to work for the people who had elected him. He was doing what they were asking of him, and then allegations get trotted out, and without even so much as a straw poll amongst the people he was representing, he's out. Okay. I'd like them to go ahead and proceed with an actual investigation. Maybe somebody needs to go file a formal complaint, make a sworn statement. I think he would like that too, because that's what due process would look like. And I like to think that Al Franken believes in due process, and he would respect it. Oh, and poor what's his name? That guy out in Alabama. That one who wanted to represent the white people of that state, and he lost that election because the black people had the audacity to go vote in their own best interest. And the black women, because the white women voted for what's his name?
Trump, too.
Yeah, I know. Well, thank God for Alabama, because, it gives Texas somebody to just like, oh. If it weren't for Alabama and Mississippi, where would we be? You know where we'd be. Okay, yeah, I know, and that what's his name? He was also facing allegations of sexual misconduct from decades earlier. I'd like to see some due process there, too. I'd like some sworn statements, because otherwise the accountability is incomplete and it's just for show. And that ain't right. I want y'all to know, I didn't really object to his fitness for office based on things that he might have done 30 years ago. I objected to his fitness for office because of things he said last year and 6 months ago. Okay. Yeah, yesterday. Yeah. So I'm going to just say, poor every politician who is having to face the glare of public scrutiny and finding all their imperfections magnified. And poor all of us, because we get these magnified images. Oh my God. I didn't need to see that. Or hear that. Okay. I want you to know that the Johnson Act is not going to be repealed. And because of that, I, as a minister, standing here in this pulpit, I cannot endorse or decry any political candidate or party without fear of endangering this fellowship's status as a nonprofit. Okay? I can yell about policies and practices. I just can't yell about the people who make the policies and practices. Okay, but that's okay with me. That's okay with me. And here's why: because I come from some very good, sound, progressive stock. And yes, I consider myself a flaming weenie liberal. But I also have the irritating habit of looking for a spark of divinity in each person, including politicians. It's really annoying. I'm always pointing out their human vulnerability, where they're acting out of fear, and their actual need for love and compassion and connectedness. Yes, even politicians need compassion. Oh, here's another really annoying thing. I won't label them or anyone else with a label that I won't also use on myself. Labels like self-serving ninny or racist. That's right. I won't label anyone a racist unless I'm willing to call myself a racist. And sometimes I am. This helps me keep my self-righteousness in check. Now, ideas, behaviors, policies, practices, yes, I will label those. I will label those as oppressive or racist or misogynist. I will label those things, but not people, not even politicians. This really annoys my family. Oh, here's another irksome practice. I affirm and promote the belief that people are capable of change and growth. I believe this because I have seen it, I have done it, and I might do it again. Hearts can shift. Minds can open. Lives can pivot towards growth. I believe that even politicians can change and grow. Okay? I'm glad that Roy Moore lost, but not because of any sexual misconduct allegations. Those were the prurient headlines that made us all pay attention and be indignant. But those allegations were of behavior from 30 years ago, and just as much as I believe that justice is love made manifest, I must also believe that growth and change are possible. As a minister, I'm charged with looking for hope. I'm not very good at it yet. But I hope that many years ago, Mr. Moore came to understand his errors. I hope that he has repented in deed and in his heart. I still think there should be an investigation. But I have to extend that hope that he has grown, because I would hope that same hope is extended to me. All of this flies in the face of our current political discourse. There's precious little consideration for the imperfections in the people in power. And when we do consider their imperfections, we see it as a weakness, something to be exploited. Our politicians, our leaders are being held to unrealistic expectations of moral spotlessness. When really, what we need from leaders, what we really need from them is just a smidgen more selflessness than the average person, an ability to put their own self-interests in check just long enough to consider the whole. What we need from our leaders is a willingness to make imperfect decisions and change them. Okay, all that said, who in their right mind would want to be a politician? Who would run for political office? Is there anybody in this room who's willing to run for school board? City council? Is there anybody who's willing to go step forward, put themselves out there? Parks board, anybody? Now keep in mind that if you were to do that, if you were to step forward, think about any photographs of yourself that might surface. Think about the things that you might have said when you were 18 years old that somebody's going to bring back and say, don't you remember back when you did that? See, when politicians and others express a desire to go back to earlier generations when things were better for them, one of the things that they would like to get back to is having a private life where they can make bad decisions in private without the public gaze upon them. And that's just not going to happen anymore. Because right now we have linked our kind of puritanical insistence on moral correctness. And then we're shining this steady spotlight of the electronic media. And there is no room for error. And yet, we still seem to have an imbalance of injustice. We're politicians. Poor all of us. Ah! Here's why I'm bringing this to us today. Because tomorrow we're going to be honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I'm bringing this up because you know and I know that if Dr. King were still with us, still being alive and a human being, his critics would be attempting to discredit his life's work based upon missteps he made as a younger man. Plenty of people have already tried it because he was not perfect. Few charismatic people are, few any of us are. But we still hold him up to be a great leader. And not just because of his convenient and tragic assassination, but because he was truly a prophetic voice. He was a person who was willing to step forward. And he was a man who knew the risks of speaking up and stepping forward, and he did it anyhow. He did what few of us have ever had the guts to do. And he did it while the whole world watched. Our greatest leaders hold up well under scrutiny, even when their imperfections are revealed. And not just because they gain this honorable patina over time, they hold up well because with hindsight, we can better understand their vulnerability and we can see how they persevered despite their humanity. I'm reminding us of this because tomorrow we will be reminded of the great speeches. We will be reminded of the courage of the marches. We'll be reminded of the things he wrote. We will see him being made almost into a divinely appointed messenger. And I have a little problem with it. Because when we cast somebody almost into a divine position, we deny them their humanity. Because then the problem that happens, I'm a Unitarian. Remember, I'm not a Trinitarian. I believe that Jesus was a man. And the problem making Jesus into a God and not a man is then we cannot see ourselves. Well, I could never do that. Well, he was a God. I could never step forward. He was great. We have to keep our great people in order to fully connect and see our own potential for that type of courage. Dr. King wasn't perfect. He was not a morally spotless human being, but he was an astonishing prophet. Now let us consider George Wallace. We're not going to be hearing too much about him tomorrow, are we? He was a politician from Alabama. Thank you, Alabama. Texas says thank you. He sincerely held racist beliefs, and he sincerely, or politically advantageously, but I think sincerely, believed in the separation of the races as he understood them. He proclaimed segregation now, segregation tomorrow, and segregation forever. He upheld and defended these beliefs in the face of growing moral opposition. He stood by them because he truly believed that he was acting on behalf of the white people who elected him. He turned that reverence and that hatred into an aura around him. He ran with that. Eventually, yes, he was shot, he was paralyzed, and he conducted the rest of his career from a wheelchair, and it pained him, it humiliated him because he saw the public turned from gracing him with power to painting him with pity. Ultimately, as the arc of history bent ever so slightly towards justice, George Wallace was left whimpering out revisionist apologies. When he had nothing left to gain, no power over anything, he asked for forgiveness. It was a small change, and it was far too late to make a difference. But it was a change. It was a human change, maybe even a cynical attempt at change, but it was the kind of change that I must acknowledge, because that is the kind of person I am called to be. A person who believes in change. Okay. So here we are at the now what. How are we supposed to go out and traffic in hope? How are we supposed to go find that spark of the divine in each person? How are we supposed to embrace people's perfect imperfections even as they seek to be our leaders? Well, I still think some of you should go run for public office because I believe in you. And I think any one of us should go ahead and stake out some big patch of moral high ground. It's where we need to be. And we need to welcome anyone who would welcome everyone into that moral high ground. Here's what I ask of you. I ask that you identify your highest commitments, and then you go out into the world and you live them. It ain't easy. And while you're doing that, please do not get distracted by all that crazy stuff that makes the headlines, those, No, don't get distracted. If you're not sure what to listen to, go find a person who holds less power than you and begin your listening there. Be wary of anything that attempts to pull you off of your center. Be wary of anything that threatens to disturb your connection to your base, connection to what is holy. And then you must also be wary of anything that drags you into an exaggeration of your certainty. Check your self-righteousness. Think of the Tao, the yin and yang, the dance between two equals. But look, as one side grows fuller, more full of itself, it suddenly flips and it becomes its opposite. It becomes what it resisted. What are you resisting? Forgive yourself for flipping out. Forgive others when they flip out. And then get back to answering your call. What is your call? Where is it coming from? It's coming from your future self. The one who will be looking back at your present self, looking back at you with love and tenderness, and will be satisfied with your imperfect efforts at bending that arc of the universe towards justice. It's what Dr. King was able to do. It's what George Wallace desperately wanted to do. May you have the courage to identify and answer your call. May it be so, and blessed be.